Hello, sir. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Bart?
Good. Thanks for being patient. Thanks for coming on the line.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, you got a hand for us?
I do, yeah. We were playing 2-5 at MGM Springfield.
Oh, another one of these MGM Springfield hands. But again, a place I have not been to, MGM Springfield. I was at the Republican State Convention in 1994, though, at the Springfield Convention Center when they nominated Mitt Romney for Senate and he lost. This was before he was the governor of Massachusetts. All right, 2-5 MGM Springfield.
All right.
Yep.
And we were playing nine-handed.
Okay, nine-handed. Yep.
Okay. So in this hand, the button straddle is on, and it folds to the low jack, who he's been pretty active. He's been raising a lot, especially, in later positions.
Hmm.
And so he opens to 40.
So the low jack raises to 40.
Yeah.
And how deep are the stacks?
Oh, so I cover him. We're 1150
Okay.
effective.
So 1150 with 2510, not super deep. So he makes it 40. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I am in the cutoff with Ace of Hearts and King of Clubs. And
Ace of Hearts, King of Clubs in the cutoff. Okay.
yep. And I go ahead and three bet to 125.
So hero in cutoff, Ace of Hearts, King of Clubs. So 125. Okay. Uh huh.
Yep. And then folds all the way back to him and he calls.
So your head's up, and the pot is probably like 260, something like that, right?
Yeah, like 260, 265,
Okay.
something like that. And then just a little bit of backstory on the villain. The hand directly before this one played out similar, where he had opened, I'd three bet him with Ace Queen, and he had called a double barrel on like a Jack 10-5 board with two diamonds, and I ended up checking the river, and he called all the way down with bottom pair. So pretty sticky. I'll say that, and that plays into this hand. The
Okay.
fact that I know he's kind of sticky.
Okay.
Okay, so the flop comes out 10 of hearts, 7 of clubs, 6 of spades.
Okay. So 10, 7, 6. You have Ace King. Yep.
Yep, and he checks, and I decide to just check it back, because I feel like he's very, he's very sticky, and he's also pretty aggressive. And I felt like he would have check raised to flop bet just to, even if I had a decent hand, he'd probably put me in a tough spot
Well,
just on
I
the
mean,
flop.
it's a kind of a later configuration type of thing. I mean, it's not. I mean, low jack versus say cutoff. So it's not like under the gun versus under the gun one. And sometimes sort of a newer school thought when you're betting is sort of what people will call like a range bet. It's like a why do we bet? I don't know if you're a CLP subscriber because usually the two reasons why back in the day, which are still the main two reasons why you bet no limit is obviously like for value to get called by worse or as a bluff. You do some protection betting. And then now there's like some range betting, which is like if I bet my entire range in a given scenario, I will show up, I will have more EV throughout my entire range by the end of the hand, which can be true in a given scenario. Now, if you look at this one though, this is really simple. If you looked at the first two, reasons to bet, like you're probably not going to get value from worse, and you're probably not going to get better to fold with maybe a couple exceptions like deuce deuce and 3-3, and maybe like you might get like ace queen or something like that, or ace jack to call. So I'm not just saying that it's a check for those reasons, but the board probably doesn't quite favor you as much. So I don't have a problem with the check, but there's definitely more going on. Also, starting a bet will sort of lend credence to the fact that you might have a stronger hand and be able to put larger bets on later on. Like if you take a step back and if you don't bet early on in a street, and then a guy ends up with like a hand that he will sort of think is worth X amount, you don't get to X that easily if you don't put a bet in early on, if you follow what I'm saying.
I see what you're saying.
So
Okay.
yeah, so all right, so it goes check check. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the turn comes the King of Hearts.
Okay, so you hit top pair now.
Yep. And it brings in a backdoor flush draw.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so checks to me again, and I go for like a smaller bet size. I bet one third pot. I bet 90.
Okay.
Um, and then the
Well, that's not
villain.
really that's not small. Did you say that was small?
Well, I mean,
190 and
like
a
if you.
260?
Oh no, just 90.
Oh, 90. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, okay. Yeah, well, one third or
yeah.
something. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then the villain check raises to 250.
So to 250. I mean, you have to call, right? Like it's very very small. So check raise to 250. So you're going to be getting like an incredible price here. So you bet 90 into 260 is 350 and then he goes to 250. Check raise to 250. So
Mhm.
the pot's going to be like 600 and it's like 160 for you to call, right? You're probably going to be getting like 4.5 to 1 if I'm doing the math right. Now, I will say that, you know, this is scary because this is what I always say. I mean, not so much necessarily in three bet pots, but if I had like a sort of a decent semi bluff here from your opponent's perspective. Say, for example, like I had Queen Jack of Hearts here. I like the check raise because I expect you to bet a lot when you check back the flop on a king. You might not necessarily even have a king, but when you do check back the flop, it kind of caps your range towards like not so sort of like one pair types of hands. Maybe you do some slow playing, but I don't think you're going to be checking many sets on the flop. So if you have like ace king here, it puts you really in a tough spot. Plus, you could be barreling with like, just air here on the turn,
Right.
thinking that it's a good, say, turn card. So I actually like these spots when a card comes that sort of hits my opponent's range after he checks back the flop as the pre-flop aggressor and I have a big draw from up front. I do like a check raise. So I can see some draws doing that. Now, whether or not this guy's doing that, who knows? Jack nine of hearts, queen jack of hearts, stuff like that. And to be honest, I think you could even take like small pairs and hearts here, like if you had 5 6 of hearts, because that probably you probably want to start turning that. I don't know if that's going to have the type of showdown value that you'll need. I might start doing that a little bit if I think my opponent will fold ever some better hands. But I mean, obviously, I would continue here if I were you.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a great card for me just in general, even if I don't have top pair. I mean, I could have a hand like ace queen or ace jack where I pick up, a gutter and an over. Um, Plus I have the ace of hearts, so if I have or I could have ace high flush draws and stuff like that. So I'd be calling a check raise anyway, especially since it was so small. It was like I think even if I had a hand like pocket queens or jacks like an underpair to the king, I might still bet this sizing just as like a.
Yeah, but how are you getting here though? You're saying that you're going to check back the flop with jacks and queens and then bet when a king arrives. I mean, that's
um
that's
yeah, I guess you're right. It's just I guess I'm not always betting over pairs on that flop. I mean, I guess it is pretty dry. So it's like I didn't want to like.
I mean, the other thing too is that like, especially you see, you have the ace of hearts in your hand, but I mean, if you checked back like ace jack or ace queen, and then now you bet the turn, you're like, all right, I just need to get like some sort of like really bad hands out, like if he has 5 6, right, or if he's got threes or
Right.
fours. I don't think you'd be. I wouldn't call the check raise though, even if it was really small. I mean, that you have to fold some hands, right? If you have ace jack and ace queen, especially if you had a heart in your hand where you're blocking like the straight draw and flush draws, like if you had ace queen with like the queen of hearts, seems like it would be a very bad call to a check raise.
Hmm.
Um, Even to this sizing on the turn, to be honest with you, you have to have some folds. But
Okay.
I mean, you have ace king, right? So I assume you call here, right?
Yeah, I call. Yeah.
So the pot's what, 760?
Yep.
All right, so 760, okay.
Okay.
And the
And
river,
now the river comes the Jack of Spades.
okay.
So flush draw bricks, and I'm sitting here, I have top, and now the villain does something interesting, which I wasn't expecting. I was kind of expecting him to jam because he has a pot size bet left,
So what is he at? He's
probably.
got about 700 to 800 left, right?
Right. He's got
Yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah.
pretty close to 800.
Uh-huh.
And so he checks,
Okay.
which I thought was very interesting.
So he checks.
Yeah.
So cut off, excuse me, low, what is it? Low jack. Low jack checks. I mean, here's the thing. So I'm all for going for really, really sort of thin value in a given. Now, there's no one liner out here, no flushes, but I'm all for going for some like very, very thin value in given scenarios. But I will say that there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, sometimes in a given scenario, you can check back. You're supposed to check back very even strong hands at the river if you think your opponent either has a misdraw or a super strong hand and that's trapping. Okay, those are extremes. I don't know if you want to say he arrived with a polar checking range. I don't know if that's a thing. Like I said, all these hands are all made up, but I have checked back very strong hands at the end when I just thought, okay, my opponent either missed a draw or like even though my hand's strong, it's not stronger than what he's actually representing, and he might be trapping me, right? However, I would say that the texture has to be a little bit different here for me to go for value here with ace king. Occasionally what you'll see is somebody check raise top pair flush draw at some point because they think it's like, oh, a huge hand. So if he could somehow have like a king and a flush draw, which he can't here, right? Because the board's 10 of hearts, 7 of clubs, 6 of spades, king of hearts. I would go for value. If it was possible that somebody could have top pair and a flush draw here, I might go for value. We put up a sample hand with a new content contributor, Peter Stay in School, yesterday, I think, on YouTube that sort of demonstrates this. We kept talking about Peter had ace king too, and his opponent had check raised him on the flop and continued with a firing on the turn, and then it appeared like his opponent might have been counterfeit. And in that particular situation, it would have been possible that his opponent could have had top pair and a flush draw continuing on the turn. Here, it's not possible. So I think I checked this one back here because I don't think that just king queen is just going to check raise here. Now, if he had like queen jack of hearts here, right, and he check raised, is he going to call the end? That's kind of my point.
That's what I was thinking too. When he checked, I thought he had a hand that like Queen Jack that had some showdown value, and then he was just trying to just check it down, pretty much. And I thought, he had been pretty sticky. He called, like that last hand I just did, he called me with bottom pair, on the flop and turn. So I thought maybe I could go for some value, and I think this is where I
But
messed the hand.
what is he check raising the turn with that he's calling a bet at the end though?
I put him on a draw.
Okay,
Because
so
like there's some hands like besides Queen Jack, there's I thought he could have had a hand like Jack 9 suited, which would have been a like a double gutter.
well, Queen Jack and Jack 9 are the same. I put that in the same category of draw, which is like a draw with the jack that runs into a pair. But the other subtle thing here too is that any of the pair plus flush draws, so any flush draw here that ends up with like some sort of showdown value is either sort of like the jack X, or though the other thing too is that it's like 7 or 6X, which aren't really strong enough to call because the king of hearts and the 10 of hearts are out there. So anyways, all right. So how much did you bet?
So I decided to bet 330, which I think I should have went down if I was gonna bet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that I bet too much there.
I mean, are you committing yourself here too?
That's the thing is like I really when he checked the river, I really put him on a hand with showdown. Like maybe he had even a hand like I don't know, like 10-9,
I mean, if
which would have been a pair and a
he
gutter.
shoves here, the pot's going to be 1,800, 400 to call. Are you going to fold if he check jams here? It'll be 1,800, 400 for you to call, even less than that.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I wasn't expecting him to check jam when he checks, I'm like, okay, I think he has showdown. I'm just gonna bet, and I kind of I don't know. I think I should have just checked this back, but anyway, so I bet 330,
Mm-hmm.
and now he double check raises, so he check raises all in for 775.
I
And
mean, I
now
don't.
I'm hating life.
That's a very, very sort of under. I mean, obviously, that's a very under bluff line. 775 total, right?
Yeah, he had about
Yeah, so
775.
it is. It's like 400, like 18. I mean, you're getting incredible pot odds here. Usually people don't turn. They'd have to have some sort of weird thing to turn into kind of like a bluff. With that being said, I don't usually see somebody like there's no guarantee that you're betting here, which is kind of makes me curious. Like if he has like 8-9 or a set, why would he check the river to go for a check raise, right? When so many people are like checking like aces or ace king in your spot. So it's kind
Hmm.
of it's a little bizarre. I gotta be
It
honest with you.
really is,
It's a
yeah.
little bizarre to me. I might even flick in the call here, even though I think that these rivers are very, very under bluffed. But for the sole reason that you're bluff catching, it looks like you're bluff catching. Why would he take a thick hand and try to check raise the river when so many people are checking behind here?
Right, especially when I'm getting a great price. I think I'm getting a little over 4-1, which is like I think top might. I feel like it's borderline, because it's just one pair.
Yeah, there's a lot of mixed responses from the live chat. So what ended up happening? Did you call or what?
I did end up calling. I went in the tank for a while. I ended up
Uh-huh.
calling, and he flipped over Queen Jack.
He turned Queen Jack into a bluff?
I know. Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting because that might, I mean, I assume that I assume that the hands that would want to bluff would be the ones that so you get really like wanky with it's like what do they have so you don't want to have a heart in your hand as the hero here.
Right,
You do
right. That was
not,
one
right,
major
you
thing. Yeah.
don't want to have a heart in your hand. So what that would mean is that the villain probably would want to have a heart in his hand so that you would have less of a chance of having a heart in your hand to call.
Yes.
Then also too, like I guess, some of the straightening cards, right? He's gonna have like, so that you don't have them. I assume an 8, a 9, a queen.
Hmm.
Sometimes the stuff's tough to do off the top, but I'm a little bit surprised though that he took that far up. But I mean, hey, I mean it's one of these things where theory of check raise rivers again, situation where you check a hand that's medium strength because if it goes check check you win, but then sometimes you realize when somebody bets you're not going to win, so you turn it into a raise versus just a pure bluff where you have no showdown value. You can't just check. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right. That was my thinking. I'm like, if he has, and I think the reason he did with Queen Jack was because he blocks like Ace Queen and Queen Nine, which have been a straight.
right.
So he kind of had like the good blocker to make that play, but it was still, I expect him to call there like so often just because I felt like he was getting a good price with Queen Jack. Like, I only bet 330 into 760.
Yeah. Anyways, I gotta move along. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.